What we want to talk about here is the next step in social beyond just listening and engagement. A lot of what we've done so far in social media has been around the listening aspect of it, which I think is good, right? Because by listening, you can understand. You can understand what people are saying, what they're thinking, how they're approaching certain things. And now we're into this engagement period where we're starting to say, okay, I've listened a little bit. Now I want to engage with these people and see what happens. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. Now what's the next step? And I think we've talked a little bit about it now. These people are going to give you a little bit more context into what it really means. So I'll go ahead and start the panel discussion, but if any of you have a question, just either raise your hand or come up to the mic. I don't mind coming down to you. If you are fearful of getting up and asking questions, that happens. And I understand that. It takes me a long time to get up on stages like this. So, what is the next step in social beyond listening and engagement? And I'd like to actually ask an industry analyst. So please, what do you think is the next step beyond listening and engagement? Is it brand advocacy?
Well, I don't see it necessarily as a straight line, right? Because the most important thing that you can ever do is listen, right? To understand what your customers, what your community care about. Beyond that, yes, engagement. Beyond that, yes, advocacy. Beyond that, yes, helping them by supporting them. And then finally, ideating with them, getting ideas from them. And, it is kind of a cycle. So, the most important thing to think about is that, we're at a point now where consumers have the power. They can publish, they can talk about you, they can talk about you when you're not there, to their friends. And we're so far past the days when companies have the power, and I think what we really need to remember here is that it's really less about the brand or anything else than it is about what consumers do amongst themselves. And that's really where I think we should be focused.
Rob, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly agree with Susan's comment that listening is important. I think it's the foundation of all effective relationships. But what we believe is the next step, and to kind of along the lines of the theme of tonight, is clearly it's important to listen, and brands don't do a very good job of that today. They're doing a better job of it, I think, through tools like Twitter. And it's important to engage your customers, and we're seeing how now there are a whole crop of tools where you can engage your Facebook fans and contests and surveys, and a lot of that is being aimed at Facebook because brands want to go where the audience is, and today increasingly the audience is on Facebook. But the third part of this is advocacy, which we don't say that you should not listen, you certainly should, and you should engage, but ultimately the most valuable thing that you can do for your brand is get someone to recommend you. And so that's what we would say is beyond listening and engagement, is to be able to identify who your advocates are and make it easy for them to recommend you. And the other thing that I'll close by saying here is that I recently saw a quote, Susan, from the head of the CMO at Visa. And Visa spends a tremendous amount of money on paid media. And the CMO at Visa was quoted in Ad Age from a speech he gave at AdTech where he said, recommendations are the new advertising. Think about that. This is from a guy who spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year on paid media. And he said it's recommendations that are the new advertising. So I think that, what's the third step beyond listening engagement? Well, we would say it is advocacy.
Maria, how do you define the brand advocate? We just heard Rob talk about fans and followers. In your eyes, and I know you guys probably have a lot, and we talked about this a little bit, how do you define the true advocate and versus just say a fan?
There's so much to say. To build on what Rob and Susan said, I agree it's not linear. I agree that it's a goal to build our relationships with our customers, to identify our customers that are the most passionate about us. So I do think that going back to how you define an advocate, for us at Adobe, and just a quick definition of sort of my role to adequately represent all of Adobe, is that we have a corporate team that works with all the teams around the company who engage with communities. So we do all of the brand and corporate activities, but there's all of our product teams that are fully engaged and running really robust programs in building out communities of advocates. And so for us, the way that we would define advocates is probably a very valuable customer. That's not to say that all of our customers aren't valuable. They're incredibly valuable. But the advocates who are going to support, promote, and defend our products and our solutions are incredibly valuable for us for all the reasons we've already talked about. And what I wanted to say, leading on from what Susan and Rob said, is that I agree with Chris's intro that it's about people and relationships, and what's powerful about social media that does get overlooked is that it's really bringing the voice of the customer back into business. I did PR for 10 years here at Adobe, and I moved into social media about a year and a half ago. And we were trained to identify spokespeople, to be the gatekeepers, to define the messages and control those messages and push those out and influence journalists to hopefully think favorably of us. Can't control that, but hopefully. And so social media is really bringing the people into the company. It's showing this is what they think of us. This is how they talk about us. So how do we respond? And I think that's the question is, what do brands then do with all that information with the voice of the customer?
Laura, you guys are the big brands here, right? And you are now, Intuit specifically is faced with a lot of competition coming into the space right now. How do you guys think about brand advocacy, and how do you mobilize brand advocacy to do what you need to do to ward off competition?
So we initially thought of brand advocates as being people that would recommend our products, and that was what we went out and told the organization that we were trying to advocate, get our advocates out there talking, and that didn't really resonate with our sort of C-suite or when we were going out and talking. And what we realized is that our company has been founded on Net Promoter Score. Basically, our founder back in 1983 said we need to have this Net Promoter survey in place every year. We're going to figure out how many of our customers from 0 to 10 would you recommend us. If you're a 9 or a 10, you're considered to be a promoter. And what we realized is that talking in that language and telling people that we were trying to locate promoters and actually get them to promote, that really spoke to everyone in the organization and got everyone on board. And so now we actually have formal programs in place where we go out and we ask anyone who answers 9 or 10 on our Net Promoter Score, we actually ask them to go out and review our products and get involved and to join. We have communities of customers that we engage with, and we actually have product managers meet with.
Can you actually give us an example of one of those campaigns?
Sure, yeah. So the best one that we've had, the best success, has been recent actually. And we did a survey of our QuickBooks space. QuickBooks is one of our big brands. And what we found was that 17% of our QuickBooks customers indicated that they had heavily relied on Amazon reviews in specific before they decided to buy QuickBooks. And when we went out to the review site, we realized that it was really, really painful and that the reviews were awful. And it was much worse than we knew our product was, because we knew we had a much higher Net Promoter Score. We knew that the product was better. There were definitely some issues with it, but overall it's a good product. And so what we did is we actually went out and got our brand advocates to go out to Amazon and specifically said, please go out and do this. Now this was about 2 years ago that we did it, and it was a huge success. It was actually, at that time, it was us just calling them, literally. And now we've actually got more formal programs in place.
What was did you give them an incentive? What was their reason for doing it?
None. We just called them and said, could you please do this for us? And they would say, sure, we're happy to do it for you, and they'd go do it.
And Chris, one of the things, you guys can hear okay? Yeah. So I know that we're talking about a lot of theory, and I want to try to see if we can help make this as practical and realistic as possible. So we may hit this, but let's deal with it right now, because I think people may be wondering, how do you identify a brand advocate? And Laura brought up the Net Promoter Survey, and the heart of the Net Promoter Survey is what's called the ultimate question for customer loyalty, as she indicated, which is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Harley-Davidson or Adobe or the Altimeter Group or Intuit to a friend? 0 to 10. And customers who answer 0 to 6, according to Net Promoter methodology, are considered detractors. They'll go out of their way to criticize your brand and cause you to lose revenue. Customers who answer 7 to 8 are considered passives, and they're kind of on the fence. They can be poached by your competitors. And those customers who answer 9 or 10 are considered promoters. And it's as easy as that. And what you want to be able to do is drive your customers to a landing page and ask them that question. You can drive them from your website, from email, from social channels, lots of different ways to take them to that question. That's one way, one really popular and easy way to identify your advocates. Very simple and straightforward.
Yeah, when we started with that journey, it was literally us. We had asked the survey, but we hadn't done anything with it. We just had a list of names of people that we knew were advocates, according to the survey,
right.
And just literally making phone calls. Whereas now we have it more automated, where once you answer the survey using the Zuberance tools, it actually sends them straight into flows where they can write reviews and go to the Amazon site, and all sorts of things like that.
Susan, do you buy into the fact that it's just that easy asking on a point scale of 0 to 10 that that's your brand advocates? Are you think that you're getting at the heart of who your brand advocates are?
You know, no, would be the fast answer. Because I think there are a lot of different ways that people can express advocacy, right? And advocacy can mean a lot of different things. So, you know, raise your hand if you've hit like on a Facebook page. You know, raise your hand if you did it because a friend sent it to you and you're kind of too embarrassed not to like it because your friend would be upset. You know, and then there are some other ones where, you know, I mean, I probably have 20. I went actually through the other day and I kind of got rid of a bunch of my likes because I liked stuff because friends sent them to me or because, like, you know, I felt like an idiot not pressing yes, I like the American Cancer Society or whatever. But you know, or yes, I like, you know, I mean, because so it's not. So there are lots of different ways that you can advocate. There's a company in Canada called Mabel's Labels, and they make these cool little labels that you can like iron on your kids' clothes and send them off to school and camp, and then their clothes hopefully will come back so they have their names on them. And it's like this tiny little mail order business, and it's the coolest thing in the world. And I got an email from them the other day saying, will you be part of our advocacy program, which is basically involves, you know, very little. And I was kind of annoyed, actually, because I thought, you know, I do like you, but I don't like you. You know, so it's part of the issue, you know, for advocacy is understand, and this is one thing I'd like to throw back to this group, is understanding, like the first time maybe I'll do it, the second time maybe I'll do it, and by the way, I don't, you know, take free stuff. I don't want free stuff from a brand, you know, for doing that. You know, how many times can you do that before people start to get annoyed? And so I guess then the question becomes, how can you push that from the brand encouraging an advocate, the advocate encouraging another advocate, and sort of going geometric from there? So that's kind of my question back to you.
Yeah, and if you keep in mind, you know, the way that question, the way the methodologists at Satmetrics and at Bain wrote the question, the ultimate question, they said, how likely are you to recommend? They asked it as an, you know, intent. But as we all know, there's a big gap between what you say you do and what you actually do. So we just, the brands that use our platform use that question to find people who are likely to recommend. But when the rubber meets the road is now we'll serve you up an opportunity to recommend the brand. And we'll say, that's great, Susan. You like Mabel's Labels. How would you like to tell your friends about that? What was your Mabel's Labels experience? Or, now, when Susan actually takes that action and she actually proactively recommends a brand, that's an advocate. But it's just a way to find people who are in the zone. But ultimately, if it's the action that really defines an advocate versus the intent.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that. We use Zuberance, we use other platforms as well, like eCare, to identify influencers. And what we have found is that identifying influencers is really helpful. It's what you do with them after. And so our CS team, led by Jennifer Deming and Jennifer Kramer on our CS business unit side, has built a community of CS ambassadors on a private LinkedIn group. That's just one way. And really what we're focusing on with them is how do we give them the content that they've been asking for? Because we sell high-end goods. It's not a certificate for massage. You know, it's $2,000 or $3,000 for a product. So
Can you get a free massage with that?
No. Just for being around.
Not in that business.
It's not as if we're going to turn over sales month over month. So we can't just say, here, share this coupon with your friend. I think that is very valuable for a lot of businesses. And for us, it's really finding what is that quality content that they're craving? How do we make them feel recognized and special? And so you're investing much more effort after the fact, after you've identified them, to nurture those communities.
And we actually, at Intuit, we started a program called the Intuit Inner Circle, where we bring customers who identify themselves as advocates into the fold, and we provide them with events, information, sort of they get special announcements before the general public. And we found that to be a very effective way to make sure that it's not just us asking somebody to do something all the time, but making sure that it's a back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I checked out of a hotel recently, and now I think this hotel has now trained their front desk clerks to ask people when they're checking out, did you enjoy your experience? And if you say yes, they go, please, please, please write about it on Yelp, please.
Right?
You know, now, I thought that was kind of lame, right? So I thought, wouldn't it have been easier and more productive and efficient if I got an email from them a day later, and it said, hey, did you enjoy your stay at, I won't mention the name of the hotel, but can you share that on Yelp, or would you be willing to share it? Now, you just make it convenient for your customers to tell your story in a very authentic, personal way. And if you sent me, and if you said, oh, by the way, if you put your review on Yelp, we'll give you a free night's stay, I would be offended by that, because no one can buy my advocacy. So,
could you talk a little bit about the difference between a company that might be in the consumer electronics space doing advocacy versus a software company in the mid-market space?
So, perfect question. So, I'm actually in the small to mid-sized business group, so our brands are QuickBooks, payroll, things like that. And we've actually found that it runs pretty similar to how any other program might work at a consumer. It's just smaller numbers that we're dealing with. So it's very similar, just smaller, because the actual market of small businesses and medium-sized businesses is smaller than the whole market of consumers in the United States. But it's the same process for us, where we're identifying the advocates and inviting them to our programs, where in our case it's not an advocacy program, it's an inner circle, where they actually get a lot of benefit from being in it. And they love having those relationships and those contacts at Intuit. It means a lot to them, more than I would have thought. It was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, what are some of the reactions that you get from it? I mean, is there anything that you can, like, little tidbits, little...
Oh, they're just thrilled. Like the best one was we had one of our executives do a Q&A session with the Inner Circle, and it was only open to Inner Circle members. And we had hundreds of people attending this session, and I mean, you would have thought it was the Pope speaking. They were just thrilled. I got all these emails afterwards explaining how excited they were that this executive had spoken to them, and we got something like 40 different people posted on blogs about the fact that they had this interaction with this executive and giving summaries and tidbits and stuff like that. And that was all ended up being free marketing that I didn't even expect to have out of that event. And it didn't cost us anything. We just had the executive dedicate an hour of time.
So what's curious to me actually about this is the difference between, like, how would we define an advocate versus a super fan, right? Because the program that Laura's talking about sounds to me a little bit like the Microsoft MVP program, a little bit like what Marie is doing at Adobe, and what Intel has done, where there are people who are just so incredibly passionate about a product that they want to be part of it. They want to be part of that community. And then there's the rest of us who maybe there's something that we aren't that passionate about, but usually it's just stuff like, I really like this lipstick, or I liked these labels, or yeah, I'd prefer to buy a Samsung over a Sony TV, or whatever it might be. And it's a sort of a casual, everyday kind of advocacy. So how do you guys define the difference between those things, and how should companies think about that?
That's a good question. I think we're still delineating those groups and how they work together. And it's actually, in some ways, it's social media strategy and social media programs with our Facebook and Twitter strategies. People who like us and people who follow us, is less of a commitment than people who agree to be part of an MVP program where they're recognized and there's points programs. So we have both sets, and we're actually now trying to figure out how do we bring the two together. It's like a spectrum and a scale of engagement, and so how do we define and appropriately recognize and reward? But I do agree that there is a differentiation. I think you shouldn't debase or ignore any of them and engage with even your casual followers and respect them based on the content that they want to hear. But then clearly those who are fully engaged, there should be some level of recognition for them as well.
Yeah, the number one distinguishing characteristic of a brand advocate compared to, say, a super fan or an influencer is the brand advocate goes out of his or her way to recommend. That recommendation behavior is what clearly distinguishes an advocate from, say, a super fan. Now, the company that backs us, one of our venture companies, also backs a company called Lithium. And Lithium provides an online community platform. And they're a great company. And really their focus is, they work with a lot of technology companies that use these communities for peer-to-peer support. And I would say that the people that are going to those online communities to answer other customers' questions are not necessarily advocates, right? Because they're not necessarily recommenders. They may get their gratification by being technical and being able to answer a question and help somebody else out. But they may not be very good marketers of your brand. They may not be very willing to recommend. They may be more like, okay, I'm very comfortable answering a technical question, but I'm not going to recommend your brand. That's something quite different. So I think that you got to really think about, BuzzAid just put out a white paper, a very good one, by the way, I recommend it, a field guide to brand advocates. And they said, and this was the headline, brand advocates are a special breed. They're a unique breed. They're different than other consumers. I would say most of us in this audience are marketers, right? So we all understand segmentation very well, right? And this is a special segment. They're different. And again, the thing that distinguishes them, brand advocates, is their propensity, their willingness to recommend. Not the same as superfans, and certainly not the same as people that take the lowest common denominator, which is to hit like. I mean, just because someone hits like clearly doesn't necessarily mean they recommend you. In fact, recently to like AT&T, if you just wanted to complain about AT&T on Facebook, you had to like them first. Really? I just wanted to go on there and bitch about my service. I don't recommend you. But
for us, it's really been people within other organizations, so not necessarily a C-suite in another organization that's recommending us, but there's usually, at least for us, somebody within that company that uses our products that likes us and is willing to go recommend. And so the trick for us has been finding that person. And in some cases, they're identifying themselves because they might buy one of our products that's more of a certification type product or something like that that indicates that they really do care about our products. In other cases, it's just us surveying and trying to find that right person. And when we identify them, then we make sure it's really easy for them to share and also offer them to join into our inner circle so that they can continue to interact with the brand.
Yeah, Keller Fay, a word-of-mouth research firm, did a study on word-of-mouth recommendations and advocacy in B2B, Jeff, and their finding was the same as it is in consumers, that the number one most influential source for a B2B buyer is a word-of-mouth recommendation. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because I don't think any CIO decides to buy an enterprise software package or a hosting service without asking their peers, how is that working for you? Is Oracle really working for you? Is Salesforce working for you? Should I buy Sugar? Should I buy Salesforce? So there's a lot of word-of-mouth recommendations going on in B2B. It's the number one influencer. The thing that we've found is that it's a little harder to get B2B advocates to proactively and openly recommend, because oftentimes there's not that same passion around that experience that there is with, say, Jamba Juice or TiVo or Lexus or a passion brand like that. So the advocacy, the approach that you use has to be very different. It's not about, hey, write us a review. It might be, would you attend an event or a dinner and bring a colleague with you? Find those people who recommend you and get them to come, bring a friend to a dinner. So it can work. It just, you have to tailor the advocate program to your audience and to your market.
Just to add to that, it's a complex buying cycle. Maybe it's an 18-month cycle for an enterprise solution. That's what we experience on our lifecycle side, our customer experience management side. My friends over at SAP, they're very successful in building out a 2 million strong community of advocates. And I agree with Rob that the complexity of an enterprise class sale is that it's not one person making the decision. So I agree, word of mouth is critical because the business decision maker is going to go to their team. What do you think about the solution? Should we invest that kind of money? Or they have to defend it, and so they're going to aggregate a lot of data to be able to make that purchase. Complex decision. And so and it's so funny because it's probably counterintuitive, but that's where social media is even more powerful, because if there is conversations happening in the social media sphere, and they're hearing this from multiple sources, they're more inclined to move down the path of making that complex decision in your favor. If none of those conversations are happening, if you don't have that robust community, then they're going to make that decision in isolation, and chances are they may not go for your brand. And so I know it is counterintuitive, it is much more complex, but similar dynamics do apply, I think, for B2B.
And here's some data that will blow your mind, by the way. One other thought on B2B. Did you guys know, according to Forrester research, that B2B buyers are actually heavier users of social media than consumers. That blew my mind when I read it, and Josh Burnoff blogged about it. So sometimes we talk to B2B companies and they go, oh, you know what, our customers and prospects don't use Facebook. Well, do they use LinkedIn? Are they on online communities? Are they plugged into online forums? And so if you Google that, you go find that research or the Josh Burnoff blog, you'll actually see that this defies conventional wisdom. B2B users and buyers are actually very heavy users of social media. So don't ignore social channels when it comes to B2B marketing and social media.
And when it comes to brand advocacy, you're actually talking about people to people. So even if you are talking to another business, it's actually the person in the business you're trying to reach. And chances are that person is on Facebook. Even if it's not for their professional life, it may be for their personal life.
You mean B2B buyers are really people too?
Yeah, amazing.
How about that?
Yeah, I should be paying you. That's what I was going to bring it back to. Bring it back to the people. I mean, you got to think about B2B as, look, my livelihood is on the line here, so it is going to be a more complex recommendation. It's not as simple as, okay, you don't like Alexis like I do. Oh well, you know, that is not that much of a survival mechanism inside of people. But if your CEO says, hey, you recommended this, and it's not working for us, there's a big deal there that people have a harder time coming out on a B2B sense and being that forthcoming with the things that they like about these companies. And that's why it is more complex, because you're talking about their livelihood. But Alex, you saw the question?
Oh, I was going to talk about, I really enjoyed the discussion between a Facebook like and a recommendation. And
why are brands and marketers so hung up on getting more people to like them on Facebook? What is the payoff of that? Why are they doing that? I mean, I actually saw a small merchant in Redwood Shores. I think they were a skincare company. And outside their store, they had a sign, and it said, like us on Facebook and get 10% off. And I went in and I asked the store owner, I said, why is that worth 10% off, just to get someone to like you? So why do marketers spend on that?
You know, there's a way in which it's smart and there's a way in which it's dumb, right? The way in which it's smart is that when you walk into a restaurant if no one's there, right? So if you see there's a buzz around something, it kind of draws you to it. So that's the way it's smart. The way it's dumb is, so what, right? So what? Oreo, which, you know, amazingly, I would, you know, challenge you to guess how many Facebook fans they have.
In the millions, right? It's
like
Skittles. It's like some other
19 million Facebook fans. 19 million. Okay, but here's the thing. They're really smart about how they engage them. Where's your favorite place to eat an Oreo? What's the grossest flavor Oreo you can think of? What kind of Oreo would you want to have? There's a constant dialogue about eating Oreos. And what's so fascinating about it is now with something like Facebook Questions, you can really quickly poll that audience and find out, like, should we maybe think about this product? Should we not? Now, a company the size of Kraft, they may or may not have a strategy. But the truth is that they've got this incredible, you know, resource to work with. The way in which it's done is, let me give you an example from a little Catholic university in New Jersey called Seton Hall. They have a really great basketball team, right? So they have about like 2,600 Facebook fans, which, you know, is not like that exciting. And the guy who was the head of social media, who actually is just on his way to Forrester now, was asked to speak somewhere about Facebook and their social media strategy. And so he's like, well, we have 2,600 fans. There's really not that much going on. I don't know what I'm going to say. I better go back to my data. So he goes back to his data, and he discovers that the people who spend time on Facebook actually convert like way more than any of their marketing programs. So and the reason is, you think about it for a second, okay, so why do people go on Facebook if they're looking for a university page? Maybe they're parents of children who are possibly applying, maybe they're juniors in college. And the truth of the matter was that they found that the people who come and engage incredibly passionately for a short period of time. And that period of time is like while they're juniors in college to maybe their first year as freshmen, because that's the part where they're like, what school do I go to? Who else is going to be there, right? Because you want to know who else is going to be there. And then, like, who could I be friends with? Are these like cool people who are posting on the wall, or are these like, do I want to like go somewhere else? And so they found that there's this incredibly short, passionate relationship that people have with them. And then, you know, the goal of that is try to make it longer term, make it a lifelong thing, right? Because have them come back as alumni. But, so that's a place where, like, the fact that they had 2,600 didn't really matter, but it taught them about what the nature of the relationship was, which was invaluable. So,
and if I can add to that too, I think our Photoshop team, our DI team, does a tremendous job in building out their Facebook community. And Maria Knapp is in the audience and can talk to her after. Where are you at now? 2.5 million? 2.5 million, and they built that up in a very short period of time, all organically. They haven't had to buy fans, and in and of itself is probably okay. So what? To your question, but they're actually using this forum to talk and engage. Probably the best example of organic engagement that I've seen, and they're taking information from our customers to feed that back into our product development cycle. And so I think that's the best of social media, to actually listen to our customers, bring the voice of the customer back in, and innovate as a result of that.
That's right. And the point is, what do you learn when you're there? And, you know, and do you make it a rewarding experience for the people who visit? Because otherwise, I mean, you know, again, how many pages have you liked that you've never gone back to?
Well, I think that the big opportunity, like, and for everybody in the audience, you know, is to turn likes into leads. You know, to turn likes into leads, right? And I think that part of what we're trying, our mission as a company, is to turn social into money. You know, so now you've got an audience, right? Now there's your 2 million, or your 50,000, or even 10,000. So how can you find among that audience your advocates who will go and recommend you and turn that like into a lead, and a lead into a sale? And I think that that's why, you know, we're really in the golden era now. It's like 1999 all over again, right? You saw LinkedIn's IPO. It's the gold rush all over again. If you don't work for a social media company, go work for one right now, because this is the time, right?
And, you know, I just want to thank you guys, because this is a great conversation, and I don't have to do much of anything, but we do have a lot of hands popping up. So
all right, bring on the questions.
Hi, this is a question for Laura and Maria. Can you tell us a little bit more about your advocate programs and Inner Circle? Are all advocates ranked the same? Are there levels within the program? And also, I hear a lot about customers as advocates. Do you include other people in your advocate programs, as far as partners, resellers?
So yeah, we definitely see it as a funnel, very much so. So people answer the Net Promoter Score question. We know if they're an advocate or not. We then ask them to share, like, will you share a review? Will you write something, see if they're really engaged? And then those that are, that's when we invite them to our Inner Circle. And so our Inner Circle members are about 6,000 strong, whereas our total advocate base is around 40,000, 50,000, somewhere around there. Yeah, growing, definitely growing. We think we definitely have room to get more advocates into the funnel. But we definitely see it as a funnel, because the people that are in that 6,000 group of Inner Circle, those are the fanatics, the ones that really love our products, that are wanting to hear from us, wanting to share. And so we spend a lot more time and energy on that group than we do on the general 40,000.
Yeah, and on the Adobe side, we use, all of our advocate programs are different based on that community. So we have very diverse audiences. We have developers that develop for Flash and other solutions. And then we have basically consumers buying Photoshop elements. And so all of our advocate programs are tailored to meet those needs. So on the developer side, we have more of an MVP program with a reward system that's very long-standing. On the consumer side, we're just initiating some of these programs, and it's more about engaging with them and figuring out what do they need and what do they want. There's no reward system built in. It's more, oh, there's this opportunity, do you want to share? And at a very brand level, which I'm responsible for, what we've used, what we've tapped into the power of brand advocates for us to really help to defend our brand in times of need. And so an example of that is that we took the opportunity to pre-brief our advocates before the launch of an ad campaign. It's something that we were only doing with journalists at the time. You know, here's a snapshot of what we're about to do. We're about to launch it the next day. We wanted to give you a preview. We did that with our brand advocates, and it was really fortuitous that we did, because the coverage that we got from the journalists who we briefed was not very favorable. They took the message and chose to take a very controversial angle, which was smart for them, but unfortunate for us. But luckily, we had pre-briefed our brand advocates that same day, and so when we saw the article came out that was not greatly favorable toward us, we just said, if you know, you saw the same briefing. If you didn't agree with this, feel free to chime in. We didn't tell them what to say. We didn't even tell them to go do it. Just said, did you agree with this? And fortunately, 4 or 5 of them stepped up and made comments to that article. And it helped change the tenor of the conversation. It helped present a different perspective. Because really, at that time, nobody else could see it. So they were going to trust that journalist in that article, that that's what it was. And so that really helped to balance things out. We're very grateful that we took that step of bringing them into this inner circle, pre-briefing them as we had done with influencers, you know, forever before.
I'd like to ask a question about a different portion of the customer audience or target audience. You know, like Sally Fields, everybody in every company wants to be liked. I consider myself a likable guy, but there are some people out there who don't like me, and on certain days that includes my wife. But what do you do to address that side of the audience? Because I understand, I forget the exact numbers, but a negative detractor, somebody who's vocally very loud about being negative and complaining about your company, will tell 10 or 15 people, whereas somebody who advocates it is only 2 or 3 people that they're telling. So how do you address that segment of the audience? Do you have any tips for that, or do you just ignore them? Or how?
Well, we always say to brands, well, go talk to them, find out what the hell is wrong, and see if you can fix it. You know, many times companies get the criticism they deserve, and so I had this conversation with someone earlier where we said, you know, we don't create advocates. We can't create advocates for Adobe or Intuit. They exist. Nor, as a company, can we, you know, turn a detractor into an advocate. That's your job, you know. But I'd say the first thing you need to do is, you know, own up. You know, if you've done something wrong, if your service sucks, if you put people on hold, if your people who come to your house to repair people fall asleep on your couch, like they did for Comcast, well, fire that person and go get some better people.
And we've found something similar that we have when we have service outages, which happened today actually, that when we jump in there and as ourselves on Facebook and on Twitter and we're just responding to people, the conversation immediately changes. It turns from sort of a hater, sort of gets worse and worse and worse, and then you jump in there and suddenly it becomes much more civil and it's more of a back and forth conversation. And then what we do as a marketing team is consolidate all that information of all the things people are complaining about and bring it to the different groups within Intuit and actually get changes made. And we've seen some of our best sort of social marketing campaigns have actually been us making changes to the customer experience based on what we've heard, and then going back out and saying, hey, we listened to you, this is what we did. And the advocates and the detractors go out there and share that very broadly, and it's been hugely successful.
And have you guys seen how when a company resolves your problem, you can flip and become an advocate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like, you know, to the point that was made earlier, companies are people are infallible. But when a company corrects a problem, and I think Kara wrote about this on our blog, she had a problem with AT&T, and the AT&T got on her shit list, and yet they fixed it, and then she tweeted positively about it. So it's an opportunity, right?
Yeah, and I think the point that you're making, right, which is human behavior is when nobody's listening, we are much more likely to be vocal in a negative way. When we think people are listening, we actually become a bit more constructive because we're deep down inside, we're not that neat.
So
and I think when a company takes an active role, they realize, oh my gosh, they're listening. And so then they're like, well, you know, maybe you could just tweak this here or there and I'd be okay.
So I'd add one thing to that, sorry, Chris, which is whatever you do, do it publicly. Because, you know, I was talking to the head of customer care at a big media company a couple weeks ago, and he's like, look, if I solve something in chat, it's between me and them. But if I resolve a problem online, then everyone sees it, and everybody sees how we behave, you know, and that the problem was resolved. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, a best practice is what Wells Fargo does, for example, is they'll say, you know, DM me, or obviously they have to for regulatory reasons, and personally identifiable information, all that stuff. But, you know, it's very, very clear, Comcast really started this, you know, I'd like to, you know, is there a way I can help? You don't push yourself on them, but you say, can I help? And then if they take you up on it, you can take it into the private channel where people saw at least that you were there and you were listening.
We have our policy is 100% that we try to respond to every single negative comment publicly because we know that, you know, 9 out of 10 people are not posting, but they're reading what other people are seeing.
That's right.
And so we want to make sure that they see it as well as the person who actually complained.
Have you guys noticed, though, when you tweet out about a problem you're having, how suddenly it gets fixed? when you tried email and got no response?
Doesn't Jeremiah say that we're training our customers to yell at us?
Yeah, he does.
I'd call it consumer power, thank you.
He does.
We got a
I'm like,
question in the back.
We're always asked the question, how do we define and measure return on investment with social media programs? And we're increasingly seeing trends towards transactional brand advocacy programs that are measured in hard dollars, affiliate marketing programs, referral marketing. So I'd love to turn that question over to all of you, which is, what's your point of view on paid kind of product endorsements, if you will, and how do you guys, each of you, define ROI and measure it?
So paid endorsements we don't do, so we don't pay people to promote our products. We put out advertising, we buy banner ads, but we don't buy advocates. We are actually in the process of building out a measurement framework because we believe ROI is personal for every company. What ROI means for Adobe is not the same for Intuit. And ROI is not revenue necessarily. It could be very intangible. Charlene says, how do you put a value on a handshake? And when you're talking about social media, it's about relationships, so how do you evaluate that? And we tend to measure the things you can measure and maybe ignore the stuff that's harder to measure that could be equally or more important. So we're building out a framework that tells a story, that tells a holistic story. And part of it is maybe some of us who are on the PR side of the world being very comfortable with the softer metrics and knowing that they have value. And then having more of the marketer side on my team as well, who have the hardcore transactional metrics and tracking codes. And now we've acquired Omniture, so we have a lot of rigor in that department in tracking. And also our social analytics tool has just come out. We're in the beta of that, which has tremendous promise to kind of make connections at a very macro level of all of our outbound social media activities, conversations, and our bottom line and how are the two related. And hopefully that will help clear up that, is it really driving business value? Is there really a bottom line return? So I can kind of satiate the C-level execs. Yes, there is a tangible dollar return, which will free us up to do the stuff we know we need to do that may be harder to measure. So that said, we have a very, it's a framework, it's a dashboard, it's a story that defines metrics in the ways that's appropriate for all the different businesses.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have powered over 2 million recommendations, and we have never paid an advocate anything, nothing, not a penny for those recommendations. It is inauthentic. And imagine how you would feel if you got a recommendation, you found out someone got paid for that recommendation. So we don't believe in it. As to the second question, how do we measure? So we've developed a model. We call it ROA, Return on Advocacy. And we estimate or calculate the media value of a recommendation and the sales value of a recommendation. And I can share more details with you about that later, but it uses traditional online marketing metrics, and it also uses Forrester's estimates as part of that model.
And we also do not pay advocates. But in terms of ROI, we actually about a year ago decided we were going to measure the effect of social media and how much revenue that was bringing in. And it was actually really debilitating to the team to try to tackle that because we didn't know where to start. It's like, is it an awareness play? Is it a direct revenue? Like, what is it? And so then when we took a step back and said, well, let's just try to measure one program and see how it is. And that's when we decided to measure the Amazon reviews and realize what effect Amazon reviews were having on sales. And we're able to quantify exactly that effect, and it's a huge number. And then see that when we actually got our advocates out there, that they were making a difference and that sales were going up on Amazon, then we were able to have that direct correlation from social media to revenue. And it made us much more confident to go out and actually make revenue measurements on different programs and not try to tackle everything all at once.
The ROI question really intrigues me, doesn't it, for you, Susan, also, because it's sort of like, would you not do this if there wasn't an ROI? I mean, would you stay away from social channels if you couldn't prove an ROI? Of course you would.
Well, actually, here's a good test case for that. So if you're looking in the traditional advertising world, CPM, cost per millions of viewers, highest in television, followed by web, lowest in mobile. So the lesson here is don't invest in mobile. It's wrong. And don't buy advocates. So a lot more is measurable than you think. Okay, so I'm actually in the process of working on a report. I have a framework for this that'll be publishing in the next probably 30 days or so. And so I proposed 6 use cases for measurement. And by the way, this is not ROI only. This is a KPI model because revenue isn't the only metric in an organization, right? So here are the 6. The first one is brand health. So that's what you think, and these are things executives care about. They care about what are people saying about us, where are they saying it about us, is it good, is it bad, is it changing? The second one is marketing optimization. That's, as a CMO, am I putting my money in the right places? Did I make the decisions? What can I learn about what I'm seeing? And what decisions can I make better next time? Okay, so that's really the CMO guy or woman. The third one is revenue, okay? Top line revenue, very simple, straightforward. Are we actually getting any benefit at all from the people that I have like madly working on my Facebook and Twitter stuff? Top line revenue. That's also obviously where a tool like Zuberance comes into play, and lithium as well, because there's a story, actually, a case study on their website. FICO, the credit reporting agency, found that by creating a community, people, because they could not give advice to people on their credit scores, on how to raise their credit scores by law, they started a community so people could give each other advice. Well, the people who visit the community spend like 60-something% more than people who don't. Why? Because they get advocated to by other people in the community who said, I raised my credit score from like 650 to 720, and I had to buy a house, and this is how I did it. And they sell to each other. So that's top line. Bottom line, the next one, operational efficiency. That's number 4. Operational efficiency is when you have people selling to each other, guess what? You don't have to do as much work. And so this is the kind of thing that, you know, that early metric that Dell threw out that they had saved all sorts, or no, they made $3 million from Twitter the first year. Of course, you don't know like what they would have made it somewhere else. But the bottom line thing is what you see with companies like Verizon and others who have communities who are having the questions answered through the community. So if I want my Bluetooth headset to work with my car, to work with something, you know, my iPod, like who am I going to call? So I need to go to a community because that's an incredible use of dollars for them to try to answer that question. And guess what? A call center call probably costs like $10 versus answering something online costs like 10 cents. So that's number 4. Number 5 is customer experience, because executives also want to know, so did he walk away happy? What was the experience? What are they saying about us? Are we actually getting any benefit from what we're doing online in terms of social media with customer support? And then the 5th piece is the ideation, is innovation. It's about like, did we get ideas the way that my Starbucks idea, you know, is tremendously successful, or Cisco has done this, and lots of other companies have done this, where they're actually, and Procter & Gamble as well, where they're crowdsourcing ideas, and they're actually innovating on the backs of their consumers, but also in partnership. So there are lots of ways to measure this, and I think when you take a full enterprise view of it, as opposed to just focusing on ROI, which is a financial metric, then all of a sudden you see the ways in which social media enables every bit of business, and not just, you know, where the dollars come from.
Susan, would you also say that any ROI measurement has to start with a clear definition of objectives? And then
Absolutely.
The measurement is the measurement
Absolutely.
that really, so far too often I find that companies launch programs without a clear definition of objectives.
Absolutely.
So, and then they're wondering what the ROI was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and so, you know, and it's perfectly acceptable to say, you know what, we don't know, but we're going to learn, because if you don't invest in some of these technologies now, and if, you know, Intuit and Adobe and all these other companies hadn't taken a flyer and said, let's put some guy on, you know, he looks smart, let's put him on the Facebook thing. You know, it wouldn't have evolved to the point that it did. But companies take those kinds of risks all the time. And at a certain point, yes, you do need to learn something, and then you need to apply those learning. But again, actual mileage may vary because different companies care about different things, and different organizations and different companies care about different things.
Okay. Great. We have another question over here.
So my question is about the data sources for social media. So we've been talking about the last hour about promoters, detractors, influencers, and the kind of community or sources in the air right now is the Twitter, the Facebook, etc. I strongly believe that all the content from a relevant standpoint is coming as well from the bloggers community and the you know, the kind of higher blogosphere. So how do you see from the sources perspective the evolution of the social media per se, are we gonna go, is it the death of the blogging community versus the new social, Twitter or Facebook? How do you reconcile the two? How do you see the future moving forward?
It's like asking us to look back 50,000 years and predict today, It's evolutionary. I mean, lots of people blogging isn't going to die. Maybe long-form blogging, I don't know. Everybody's attention spans are like, you probably all tuned out, already from what I'm saying. So, think about, so there's Tumblr, right? Tumblr, teeny little blogging, right? Huge in the fashion industry. Why? Because people take pictures of stuff, just these pants look really cute, that kind of thing. So it will continue to evolve the platforms, but that's less important than the fact that people will continue to share in whatever form.
We should try to keep our answers to 140 characters.
Yeah, you can cut me off.
We got another question over here.
Yeah, I would never cut off Susan ever. But I do want to make a comment about sort of the 6 points that you make and really how you start with KPIs and they can kind of lead you in the direction of ROI. And what this list is making me think of silos inside a company. And I do social marketing at my company, and I see all kinds of issues that our customers are experiencing, yet I'm not actually the expert that can fix those issues. So it's really my job to sort of quarterback those things throughout my company. And I just wonder if, I work in a company of 200 people, which is very different than working at an Intuit or at an Adobe. And so I just wonder if you can sort of talk about these issues and the flow of information through a company. I think a lot of us that sit here are the ones that maybe hold a lot of this intel, but if you could talk about maybe how you get it through an organization, I think that could help a lot with the ROI and the KPI questions.
That one actually has been, at Intuit, definitely a tough one, because we've got 8,000 employees, and there's 5 of us that are sort of watching social media, if you will. And for us, it's really been about trying to tackle the big ones. So really looking at it and saying, what are the biggest problems that we can solve? And then actually going to those teams and working with them together. And so it does involve us getting very heavy into the kitchen with the developers of the software sometimes. But we're actually okay with that, and that's working. And what's happened is that as we've started proving out ROI, and for us it was really about proving out the revenue stream from social media was what we needed, was to show that, hey, we're getting revenue from this. That then opened the gates for us to have all of those conversations across the business units and say, you need to do this or you need to do that in order to change things. And that to us was the turning point. Because I would say we had, for the 6 that you mentioned, we had 5 of them, but not the revenue one. And everybody wanted to see the revenue one. And so once we were able to prove one program that had the revenue one, and everything fell into place, people went, oh yeah, okay, well, we get it now. And you have the opening to get into these other areas.
And I'll keep my answer brief. At Adobe, that's my team's job, is to connect the dots and work through the silos, work across departments to establish protocols that are really streamlined so that when something bubbles up in social media, but it's involving an enterprise class solution, we know how to route it to the right people, because we're not the subject matter experts. All of our teams around the company engaging in social media are. So we have protocols in place for support issues, which is just about installation or activation, and then there's deeper product issues. And so it's really about coordinating across teams and knowing how to set up those protocols so they're almost automated, so that there's less work on you as the quarterback to have to figure out who do you have to contact. And once that's established and everybody knows for these things it goes here or here, this is the right process, it's much easier. But that said, you still need that robust support presence and resource in the channels. And so one thing that our DI team has done is actually put a head count that's dedicated to support in those channels, as opposed to just having the centralized support agency support them. And we're trying to build out that model so that we have more focused support in our social media channels, because that's becoming an increasing source of issues that have to get addressed, not just through the call center.
I'm going to guess, so tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I'm going to guess that certain departments need different information, so it's not like you can just produce one thing and say, okay, now everybody go do it, right? It's not always an ROI question. It's not always a customer service question. There are other elements that different departments need to sort of get on board. And I think you sort of mentioned setting up a process and setting up automation and making it easy for people. That usually helps.
Another thing that's been really successful for us is also trying to engage people, finding advocates within the business units who love social media for their personal lives, and then actually bringing them in and having them use it for Intuit. And then once we train them, they can actually go out and be advocates within their business unit.
Great. So We've gone past time, but it's because you guys have had a lot of great questions. And asked all of my questions. So we have one last question over here, and then we will adjourn for the night. I'll wrap it up. We'll adjourn for the night. And I believe there's a little bit more networking outside. Is that right, or no? Is this it?
Yeah, I don't think we get kicked out of here right away. So
Where do we get these tecates?
You're kind of looking good.
So for our last question.
Sure, I was just going to drop a quick comment about, I can't help but cringe when I hear people ask questions like, well, which one's the one that matters? Like, which one's really the golden bullet that's going to help me get there? Or Rob's point about, why are marketers so caught up in this idea about, let's build as many people as we can in Facebook? Facebook's a medium for building relationships with and creating advocates with customers. But we forget to apply the concept of advocacy across everything that we do, because there's never going to be just one silver bullet. There's always going to be something new, something innovative that's going to come along and be a new place. This is not dissimilar from the whole concept of integrated marketing. Thinking of which one's going to be the big one is what builds bubbles that gets our economy in trouble, right? So always remember to apply the concepts of sort of overarching advocacy, customer service, all of those things across everything that you do. Don't ever look for that one.
I like the social media bubble, and I plan to profit from it handsomely.
All right, well, so first and foremost, I want to thank the people up here. They took their time out of their personal lives to be here and talk to us about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and very insightful for me. I hope it was for you. And I think just to wrap, there was 3 basic elements that I heard over and over and over again. Framework. We all need something to sort of guide us as we go into this space. And I think 3 of you all said you had a framework that you utilize to get out there. Now it's going to be different for every company because you have different needs and different desires. But that seems to be a common theme here. The other one was conversation. It wasn't about listening, it wasn't about engagement, it was nonlinear. It is about having a conversation, engaging people in many different ways and in different, specifically for the products that you're utilizing and who those customers are. And the last one, and I think this is the most important one, what I heard out of these guys is these are essentially extension of your company. You kept hearing them say, we brought them in. We got them into our culture, and then they did the work on the outside. And I think that's an important distinction.
Thank all our panelists again. Can we give them another round of applause? Wonderful panel. And, recognize